Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've had our business meeting inside. There's another business meeting going on in Heckmanwijk with the Workers' Party team there, and it's probably best that they get on with the business. I only have a few words to say. First of all, a couple of important announcements, and I have video evidence to prove this. My 10-month-old daughter, Oban, has just walked her first steps. And she walked them in Batley and Spen, something that we will never forget. The second piece of news, and I don't generally, my religion precludes it, speak ill of the recently dead, but I must make an exception, because the death has just been announced of Donald Rumsfeld, the war criminal who helped to kill 1 million people in Iraq, with the active complicity, indeed oftentimes the active encouragement of the Labour government of Tony Blair and Jack Straw and his counterpart Jeff Hoon, of whom it's apt to say now Jeff Who. But Jeff Who and Donald Rumsfeld were the military architects of a war which has never ended, which has killed 1 million people in Iraq, and which continues to cascade death and misery all over the world. As I predicted to Tony Blair in the House of Commons just a couple of weeks before the war. I mention it not just because of his demise today, but because we're still dealing with the consequences of the cataclysmic disaster of the Blair-Bush war. How so? Well, Blair is back. He's on the BBC a lot more than I am, and given I'll never be on it again, I expect that gap to widen. Alistair Campbell is on every television station, all the time, even though both men are dripping in the blood of not just 1 million people who died, not just 1 million people who died in the war and its aftermath, but the cascade of extremism, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that was triggered by the convulsion of the Blair and Bush invasion of Iraq. Peter Mandelson is picking the candidates for the Labour Party, despite his role in the Blair, Straw, Campbell gang. So they haven't gone away, you know. As a matter of fact, they are in complete control of the Labour Party that we are fighting tomorrow. So this is unfinished business, you see. This is not the Labour Party of Jeremy Corbyn we're fighting. It's the Labour Party of Tony Blair that we are fighting in this election tomorrow. It's unfinished business, you see. And today in the West Bank and in Gaza, further convulsions took place. People lost their lives. A hunger striker died. People in Gaza have no electricity, have no clean water, have no proper food or medicine. We're also fighting that battle tomorrow. Jeremy Corbyn briefly turned the Labour Party towards justice for the Palestinian people, and Keir Starmer turned it back again. And so, tomorrow, in this epic by-election, we have scores to settle. We make no apology for that. Politics is about being held accountable, because if disasters are not accounted for, they'll go on happening again and again. If war criminals pay no price, why should they stop committing war crimes? So that's my two announcements. Here's my third. The Labour Party briefed this morning at Westminster that they had only a 5% chance of holding on to this seat tomorrow. And so our first victory is already won, because 5% means 0%. It means they have briefed the press that they have already lost this contest. But we have two other goals. The first is to finish ahead of the Labour Party in this election, and the other is to win this by-election in Batley and Spen tomorrow. All day I've been saying, from the top of a bus, Batley and Spen has been neglected, left behind, taken for granted. And if there's one message in this campaign that has resonated the most, it's that one. Because no one can possibly, plausibly deny it. Even a Labour candidate who makes videos about the state of the place, even though Labour's been running the place for as long as anyone can remember. Labour complains about the potholes, so big you could sleep in. But they're their potholes, the Labour potholes, that Labour has not attended to. Labour says they now want to reopen a Batley police station. But it was Labour that closed the Batley police station. This is absolutely bizarre. We have a party running, as it were, in opposition to themselves. Labour sold the Batley police station for the price of a chip shop, a listed building in the centre of Batley. I tell you what, if I'm the MP here come Friday, I'll be opening the books on that property deal, I can assure you. Labour is responsible for the fact that Batley and Spen has been neglected, left behind, and taken for granted, and they're too late to do anything about that now. On the principle that it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, we're going to make one hell of a squeak tomorrow. And I promise you, they'll be running after you with their oil can to fill in the potholes, to cut down the dandelions and grass that are literally growing in the streets of some of the big working class housing estates in this constituency. Talk about the grass growing in the streets. go up to these estates, as I do every day, the hopelessness of so many of our young people, unable to connect with the rest of the economy, with the rest of the region, never mind the country, served by Northern Rail, possibly the worst railway company in the entire country, with buses that don't match up in timetabling and are extraordinarily expensive. Leeds is so near and yet so far. Leeds is booming, Huddersfield is booming, but Batley and Spen has been left behind. And yet our strategic position in the M1 corridor, in the M62 corridor, should mean that we are booming also. If we had proper transport here, our young people could get good jobs in Leeds. But they can't, because they can't get there and back without extraordinary journeys and extraordinary expense. So the devil finds work for idle hands. Our young people that have no future that they can see are prey to the criminals who increasingly cannot be caught because we've shut the police station. One of the funniest memes in this campaign was the two Labour councillors caught on camera ripping down our posters. And our cameraman said, "I'm going to call the police." And apocryphally they answered, "You can't call the police. We shut the police station." It's true. That's what they did. They shut the police station of all places. In Batley, of all places, they shut it. We are now, and we've press released this, embarked on a legal action against both the Labour Party and Kirklees Council for the unlawful removal of virtually every single one of our posters from lampposts in this election. At public expense, a council which can't fill in potholes sent its workforce around this whole constituency to take down our posters and leave everybody else's up. If that's not a blatant attempt to rig an election, I really don't know what you would call it. And so we have begun a legal action against them. In the unlikely event, exceedingly unlikely, that Labour were to win this by-election, we will seek to have the result set aside. I've got two words for Labour: Phil Woolas. We have a case, as long as you're armed, against Labour for breaches of electoral law, and one of them I've just described. We have WhatsApp messages between senior members of the Labour Party and officials of Kirklees Council in which they openly conspire to remove our posters from the lampposts. But according to Labour's briefing today, it's all been in vain. They have only, they say themselves, a 5% chance of holding the seat. And so lastly, that which we sought to trigger, a crisis for the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, is already underway. Absolutely clearly, a leadership challenge against Keir Starmer for losing 2 of his own seats in 2 months in by-elections created by Labour Let's not forget that. This by-election's only happening because the Labour MP doubled her money and went on to a better job, leaving her constituents in the lurch. It seems that Labour imagined that they'd be unopposed, that in a democracy no one would have the temerity to challenge them properly for this seat. But my goodness, have we challenged them properly?
Hit him in the head, George.
We have shaken the political class in Batley and Spen, across Kirklees and all the way to London. They're melting down, and there's some melting still to do. Let's do it tomorrow. Victory! Victory in Batley and Spen. Thank you very much indeed.